Okay, let's unpack this. Imagine a world teetering on the edge, I mean really on the edge, of a third world war for decades. But the actual trigger never pulled. What kind of war is that exactly?
It's a profound question, isn't it? And what's so intriguing is that this was a completely new kind of conflict, the Cold War,
Yeah?
a term coined by, I think, Walter Lippmann, the columnist.
Mm,
It wasn't about armies clashing head-on, more of a relentless tussle for power, for ideological influence, really emerging right after World War II ended.
So our mission today, then, is to really get into the defining characteristics of this unprecedented era. We want to explore the major players, the intricate web of alliances that sort of sprang up, and importantly, how nations like India managed to navigate these incredibly treacherous waters. We're drawing on a range of historical documents for this deep dive, things covering core definitions, key events, right down to specific regional impacts. So let's start there. If it wasn't a direct hot war, what was the core of this Cold War between, well, the capitalist nations led by America and the communist nations led by Soviet Russia? What actually made it cold?
That's the critical distinction, yeah. If not outright combat, then what defined it? Well, the
Yeah.
sources point to several key things. An intense, frankly terrifying race for armaments.
Nuclear arms, especially.
Absolutely. Plus, aggressive political posturing, a really profound and pervasive mutual distrust between nations, and constant political and economic pressure. Fundamentally, though, it was an ideological conflict.
So, like two completely different ways of seeing the world.
Exactly. Both sides were perpetually geared up for war, but crucially, they consciously, deliberately avoided direct confrontation between themselves. It created this tension that was just palpable everywhere, but it rarely erupted into open superpower warfare.
And it's easy to forget just how dramatically the world stage shifted after World War II. You know, the traditional powers, England, France, they were significantly diminished,
Right.
which sort of created a vacuum, allowing Soviet Russia to rapidly gain prominence in Eastern Europe, actively pushing its communist ideology.
Fill in that space.
While at the same time, America, England, France solidified their influence in Western Europe, aligning with capitalist and democratic systems. This wasn't just lines on a map, it created a very clear ideological East-West split right across the continent.
And this division became so stark, so absolute, that Sir Winston Churchill, Prime Minister of England, then famously used that term Iron Curtain to describe the divisive line that had fallen between these two ideological blocs in Europe. It just perfectly captured that sense of an impenetrable barrier, politically and militarily.
And at the very heart of it all, beyond the borders and the politics, was this fundamental clash of economic systems, wasn't it?
Absolutely central. Soviet Russia's communist ideology was rooted in governmental ownership, state control of resources, industry, aiming for collective control.
Whereas America championed private ownership, free markets.
Driven by capitalist principles, exactly. This
Right.
wasn't just about who controlled territory. It was about two fundamentally different visions for how society should work, how economies should run, and that shaped pretty much everything.
So it starts in Europe, but it doesn't stay there.
No, not at all. What's truly fascinating is how quickly this cold conflict radiated outwards. It reached Asia pretty fast, with significant events like the Sino-Soviet Treaty of Friendship in 1950.
Solidifying that communist bloc.
Right. And then the Korean conflict in the early 50s. That became a brutal proxy war, a clear sign of these ideological tensions playing out violently far from Europe.
Now, initially the Cold War really escalated under Stalin, didn't it?
It did. But then a crucial shift happened when his successor, Nikita Khrushchev, came into power. Khrushchev, it seems, really grasped the utterly devastating potential of nuclear war.
He saw the abyss.
I think so. He brought in changes, adopted more, maybe realistic policies, aimed at what he called peaceful coexistence. It's quite remarkable, actually, that in 1959, he even met President Eisenhower at Camp David.
Wow, given the tension, that must have been something.
A truly significant diplomatic moment, yes. But, despite these attempts at dialogue, tensions surged dramatically again. Think about the Berlin Wall.
61.
Erected in 1961, yeah. Physically preventing contact between West and East Berlin. It turned the city into this stark symbol of division, a wall of shame for many Germans.
And then, just a year later,
1962. The world truly held its breath during the Cuban Missile Crisis, Soviet missile deployment in Cuba. It brought humanity just terrifyingly close to nuclear war.
unimaginably close.
It was a stark reminder of how thin that line between cold and hot could actually become.
So with that kind of constant, terrifying pressure, how did things start to, well, cool down a bit? How did de-escalation begin?
Well, the sources show that measures like setting up a direct to Moscow-Washington hotline started to emerge, little steps, and various bilateral agreements.
The famous red telephone, though it wasn't actually a phone.
Right, more like a teletype machine. But this whole process of relaxing political tensions, it got a name.
Détente.
Détente, exactly. And we saw significant moments like President Nixon and Soviet Premier Brezhnev meeting in Moscow in '72. They agreed to limit nuclear missiles.
The SALT treaties.
Yes. And also, crucially, the U.S. formally acknowledged the People's Republic of China, a massive diplomatic shift.
So that decade, the 70s, saw real efforts.
It really did. There were conferences like the Paris Conference in '73 for Vietnam, the Helsinki Conference in '75 that involved 35 European countries plus the U.S. and USSR leaders, all trying to lessen the strain.
But it wasn't a straight line down, was it? Tensions flared up again.
Oh, absolutely. It wasn't a smooth road at all. New tensions erupted with the 1979 revolution, and Iran pulled out of the CENTO alliance, which was a blow to the West.
And Afghanistan.
And Russia's intervention in Afghanistan that same year, big flashpoint. Plus, the competition just kept going. Nuclear weapons, the space race, even spilling into things like international sports, the Olympics.
Right, the boycotts. So as we move towards the sort of endgame of the Cold War, a new figure emerges. Mikhail Gorbachev.
Yes, his era, starting around 1985, proved absolutely pivotal. He introduced these concepts, perestroika.
Meaning restructuring.
Right, restructuring the economy mainly. And glasnost.
Openness.
Openness, exactly. Aiming to fundamentally democratize the political system, decentralize the Soviet economy, really shake things up.
But the intention wasn't necessarily to dismantle the whole thing, was it?
No, quite the opposite. While Gorbachev's aim was to revitalize Soviet Russia, to make the system work better, his reforms, perhaps inadvertently, set in motion forces that led to its ultimate disintegration.
It kind of spun out of control.
You could say that. After 1991, the Soviet Union dissolved, just gone. Broken up into 15 independent countries, Estonia, Ukraine, Kazakhstan, many others gained sovereignty.
And that left.
That left the USA as the world's sole superpower, undeniably ushering in what we now call the post-Cold War world, a fundamental shift in global power.
And looking back, the sources really highlight something profound and quite sobering. This prolonged Cold War, even though it avoided that direct superpower clash, it came at an immense cost.
Huge costs. It constantly threatened mankind's future with political misunderstandings, this deep global division. And think about the resources, the attention.
Diverted from basic human needs.
Exactly. Diverted from things like food, housing, development. It was this high-stakes, all-consuming standoff that really cast a long shadow over generations.
Now, one of the most defining features, maybe one of the scariest features of the Cold War, was the rapid formation of these massive military alliances. Let's really dig into those for a bit.
Okay. America, in particular, moved fast to weave this global web of alliances, all designed, fundamentally, to contain Soviet influence.
Starting in Europe.
Starting in Europe with NATO, the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, formed in '49. A collective security pact, the core idea being an attack on one member, say, France or West Germany, was treated as an attack on all.
Article 5.
Precisely. Then, in the Pacific, you had the ANZ-US Treaty in '51, linking Australia, New Zealand, and the U.S., partly a response to the rise of Communist China.
And Southeast Asia.
SEATO, the Southeast Asia Treaty Organization, formed in '54, again aimed at stunting communism spread there. Though SEATO kind of struggled, partly because its membership was mainly Western powers, not enough local buy-in. It eventually dissolved in '77.
Interesting.
And CENTO.
CENTO, the Central Treaty Organization. That started as the Baghdad Pact in '55, involved nations like Turkey, Pakistan, Iran, the UK. Same goal again, check Soviet expansion, this time in the Middle East. But it also eventually became non-operational, especially after Iran and Pakistan withdrew.
So a whole network led by the U.S. How did the Soviet Union respond to all this?
Well, they had to counter it, right. To counter America's growing influence, Soviet Russia formed its own pretty formidable alliance system.
The main one being?
The Warsaw Pact. Created in 1955, it united 7 other communist countries in Eastern and Central Europe, East Germany, Poland, Hungary, etc., forming what became known as the Eastern Bloc.
The direct counter to NATO.
Exactly, the direct military counterbalance. They also solidified ties with China, remember, through that Sino-Soviet Security Pact back in 1950, providing a lot of economic and tech aid. So you had these two massive interlocking military systems just facing off across the globe. It's really quite something. But what's truly compelling here, I think, is that while these two monolithic blocs were forming, locking horns, India chose a completely different path.
A remarkably different path, yes. After gaining independence from Britain, India adopted this policy of non-alignment, meaning it would develop independently. It refused to formally join either the Soviet or the American group. It was a concept focused much more on peace, on national development, progress, rather than on war or military alignment.
Staying out of the superpower game.
Pretty much. But it wasn't just passive neutrality. The brilliance of non-alignment wasn't just about staying out. It was about actively demonstrating that global influence didn't have to rely solely on military might or aligning with a superpower. It offered a legitimate third way for newly independent nations.
And who are the key figures behind this?
The architects of this non-aligned movement, or NAM, were genuinely visionary leaders. You had India's Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru, of course, Dr. Sukarno of Indonesia, Nkrumah from Ghana, Gamal Abdel Nasser of Egypt, and Marshal Tito of Yugoslavia. A real mix of post-colonial leadership.
That's a powerful statement in such a deeply polarized world. What were the actual rules or criteria for being non-aligned?
Well, they formally adopted criteria at the first summit in Belgrade in 1961. Pretty clear stuff. Countries had to pursue an independent foreign policy based on peaceful coexistence.
So independence was key.
Absolutely. They had to actively support national independence movements around the world.
Yeah.
And crucially, no membership in Cold War military alliances, NATO, Warsaw Pact, or similar bilateral pacts that might compromise their independence. Things like not allowing foreign military bases on their soil.
And did the movement grow?
Oh, it grew significantly. They held regular conferences, constantly discussing demands to stop aggression in Asia, Africa, South America. They became a strong voice advocating for independent struggles and, importantly, for global disarmament.
Can you give some examples of what NAM focused on in those conferences?
Sure. The Cairo Conference in '64, for instance, really focused on raising global awareness against military groups and foreign bases. Then Lusaka in 1970 emphasized unity, opposing military treaties, supporting the UN. Fast forward to New Delhi in '83, India's Prime Minister Indira Gandhi gave this powerful speech on freedom, development, disarmament, and peace.
A consistent message, then.
Very consistent. NAM consistently championed a world free from superpower domination, lending crucial support to causes like the Palestinian struggle and the fight for Namibian independence. They were a significant moral and political force.
Okay, so beyond its leadership in the non-aligned movement, India itself, as this major new democracy, took a very active stance against colonialism, didn't it?
Oh, absolutely. India consistently protested against imperialism, even before its own independence in '47. Post-independence, that active non-alignment policy wasn't about being aloof or distant from global issues.
It wasn't isolationism.
Not at all. It was about striving for peace, promoting self-determination for others, and respecting sovereignty. A prime example is that Delhi Conference in 1949. India came out swinging, declared full support for Indonesia's independence, and demanded the Dutch withdraw their forces. Very proactive.
And what about India's impact specifically on the African continent during this period?
India's position regarding Africa was incredibly strong, very principled. It consistently insisted that European colonial powers had to grant independence. It actively promoted UN institutions to expand their work across Africa.
Providing support.
Yes, and spoke out forcefully against the atrocious treatment of Native Africans under colonial rule and apartheid. This wasn't just abstract policy, it reflected long-standing historical ties. Remember, there was significant Indian migration to Africa for trade, railway projects.
And Gandhi's history there.
And of course, Mahatma Gandhi's early development and use of satyagraha nonviolent resistance happened in South Africa. So there was this deep historical solidarity.
That spirit of independence and cooperation, it seems, also fueled new ways for former colonies to work together, particularly regionally. Let's talk about SAARC, the South Asian Association for Regional Cooperation.
That's a great transition, yeah. SAARC really emerged from the vision of Bangladesh's president, Ziaur Rahman. He saw the need for closer economic and social development cooperation within Asia among these newly independent or developing nations.
When was it formally set up?
It was formally established in 1985 in Dhaka. Its objectives were pretty clear. Promote rapid, all-around development for the member nations, stand united against common problems like terrorism and drug smuggling, foster mutual understanding, and cooperate internationally for collective well-being. Its main office, the Secretariat, is based in Kathmandu, Nepal.
Now, South Asia is a complex region. Did SAARC face challenges?
Oh, definitely. It faced and still faces significant challenges. Things like big economic disparities between member countries, major infrastructure gaps, and unfortunately, regional terrorism has been a persistent issue hampering cooperation.
But despite those challenges, were there successes?
Yes, there have been notable successes. SAARC established crucial centers like an agricultural information hub in Bangladesh, a meteorological research center, also in Dhaka, an orthopedic center in Kathmandu. Practical, shared resources.
Tangible benefits.
Exactly. They've also collaborated on promoting tourism, worked with UN bodies like SCAP to tackle poverty across the region, and, very importantly, formed agreements like SAFTA, the South Asian Free Trade Area, aimed specifically at boosting trade between the member countries. So it shows the potential, the power of regional partnership, even with all the complexities.
Okay, finally, let's explore one more really unique international organization, one with fascinating roots in that colonial past, the Commonwealth.
The Commonwealth of Nations. It's a unique beast, isn't it? A voluntary organization made up of sovereign states that were, at one point, part of the British Empire.
Voluntary being the key word now.
Absolutely. What's so intriguing is that the initial idea wasn't really about maintaining control in the old sense. It started more as a way to bring together governors and administrators from these colonies and dominions to exchange ideas, maybe achieve some administrative coherence as the empire evolved. It began as a kind of practical forum.
How did it adapt then as decolonization really took hold across the globe after World War II?
Well, the Statute of Westminster back in 1931 had already formalized it, granting more autonomy. But post-WWII, the Commonwealth played this unique, sometimes quite complicated role in the independence process for British colonies in Asia and Africa.
And India's role in that transformation.
Right. Here's where India's decision becomes particularly interesting. After gaining independence in 1947, India made the very strategic choice in 1948 to remain a member of the Commonwealth. But, and this is crucial, as an equal and sovereign republic, not as a dominion owing allegiance to the crown.
Why did they choose to stay in?
Several factors influenced that, according to our sources. England was still a major arms supplier, which was important for defense. Membership offered valuable foreign exchange facilities, customs duty exemptions on Indian goods entering Britain, practical economic benefits.
And political platform.
And it provided India with a vital international platform, another forum to engage with other nations, including, importantly at the time, a way to counter propaganda coming from Pakistan. So it was a pragmatic decision for a newly independent nation navigating a complex world.
Beyond the politics and economics, the Commonwealth also fostered other kinds of ties, right? Cultural, sporting.
Absolutely. The British Empire Games, which were initiated way back by Reverend Astley Cooper, evolved. They became the Commonwealth Games in 1950.
Still going strong today.
Still going strong. And India actually has shown remarkable performance in these games, especially in the 21st century, really underscoring its sporting prowess on that stage.
Was there ever a moment where the Games highlighted the Commonwealth's political or moral dimension?
Yes, a particularly significant moment was the 1986 Games in Edinburgh. 32 countries. A majority of the members, actually, including India under Prime Minister Rajiv Gandhi, boycotted those games.
Why the boycott?
It was a protest against South Africa's abhorrent racist apartheid policies. The UK government at the time, under Margaret Thatcher, had resisted imposing strong sanctions, and the boycott was a powerful statement from the Commonwealth nations, showing collective action and moral weight against apartheid, even when a leading member disagreed. It demonstrated the potential power within the Commonwealth framework.
So, wrapping this up, from the deep ideological battlefields of the Cold War and its intricate, often scary military alliances, to the nuanced, independent path of non-alignment led by figures like Nehru and India's strong anti-colonial stance, and then finally looking at the evolving roles of regional bodies like SAARC and this unique entity, the Commonwealth.
Yeah.
We've really journeyed through a remarkable, complex span of global history today.
We really have. And I think this deep dive reveals something crucial. How nations navigate these incredibly complex power dynamics. It's not just through conflict, is it? It's through this intricate dance of alliances, strategic diplomacy, asserting independent foreign policies.
Finding different ways to exert influence.
Exactly. It's a testament, really, to the enduring human drive for self-determination, for stability, amidst these massive global shifts. And, the frameworks we've discussed today, NATO, NANM, SAARC, the Commonwealth, they were all forged in the fires of these post-war power struggles. And they continue, sometimes subtly, sometimes quite profoundly, to influence international relations and that delicate balance of power even now.
Something to definitely mull over as you go about your day. We hope this deep dive helps you feel that much more well-informed about this pivotal era. Until next time, keep that curiosity alive.